Yeah, we're live. We are live. 7:39. I'm a little bit late, so we're going to run a little bit short today, but that's okay. For tonight, I want to talk about tri-power setups because I'm actually working on at least 3 different versions of tri-powers, which is very, very cool. So we want to talk about that tonight. The first one I want to talk about is I have a Pontiac 350. I also have the Trophy 4-cylinder. As luck would have it, I can run intake manifolds on both of those to accept a tri-power setup. And on the Pontiac, they use 2G Rochester carburetors on them. They use 3 of them, 3 2 barrels. That's why they call it the tri-power setup. I can use that intake manifold. Obviously, that intake manifold, the later one, I need a 65 and up intake manifold because that's when they changed the water passages. That they made the heads different. If I run different heads on it, I can use the same ones. But the Trophy 4-cylinder is an early one. It's a 61, so it's an early head on it. The Pontiac, the 350 is a 69, so it has 69 or 70, so it has the later heads on it. Those would require different manifolds. I can cure this by putting early heads on the 350, which I won't do, but I can certainly cure it by putting a later head on the Trophy 4-cylinder, or because I do have the aluminum heads from the guys at Speedmaster. So shout out to the Speedmaster guys for supplying those. We'll be running those on both of these motors, just one on the Trophy 4-cylinder, both of them obviously on the V8. But I could also do it this way. I could get 2 manifolds. I could get an early tri-power manifold. They're just cast iron manifolds. It's not terribly expensive. I could get one of those for the Trophy 4-cylinder and then one of those for the V8, run a tri-power. I like to compare a tri-power setup with working 2Gs, good, not ones that are just that I got from a wrecking yard that I don't really know about. I could rebuild them. But the cool thing is the guys from Jet, when I was talking to them at the MPMC conference, they said, hey, look, we have 2G carburetors. We rebuild these and we do all of these all the time. I said, look, I would love to do a tri-power setup. They said, yeah, we would like to do that with you. So if I can get, I think I have 2 of those 2Gs. If I can get those and get those over to the guys at Jet, and then we can get 3 of those, I'm not going to spend a fortune on dedicated linkages for a tri-power setup. I'm just going to make a Super Richie linkage, the drive-by-wire setup, because all we have to do is open them up all the way, which is what we want to do. So I can do that on the 350. We can run a tri-power setup with the 3 carburetors. I can also take that manifold off and run it on the Trophy 4-cylinder with the correct cylinder head intake combination. And we just cap the other side, run a tri-power setup on the Trophy 4-cylinder. It's way more carburation, obviously, than that combination needs, but still, it's a Trophy 4-cylinder. So it started out being half of a Pontiac 389. That's how it got its name. So it deserves to have a tri-power on it. I could also compare on both of those. We could compare a 2-barrel versus a factory 4-barrel intake manifold, which, as we know, on the Pontiac works very, very well. We ran that on the 400. We could compare the tri-power to the factory 4-barrel manifold and kind of see what's going on. I would like to test it on a combination that, could utilize whatever the power potential is of that setup, because obviously running it on a 200 or 300 horsepower Pontiac 350, not really going to show very well for these performance-oriented things. So we need to get the 350 up in power with more compression and camshaft, in which we have that stuff. So I've got some Elgin cams for it. We've got some stage 3, we have some Ram Air 3 and Ram Air 4 camshafts for it that we can run. So that will be good. So we'll be able to get the 350 making more power. We also have the aluminum heads for it. We've got some single plane intake manifolds. We've got some single plane EFI intake manifolds on it that we could run on both of them. So lots and lots of cool Pontiac stuff. So I'm all jazzed about the Pontiac stuff. The other thing that we can do, and I just found out about it tonight actually, is that Holley offers 2G EFI setups. So they look like a 2G, but they're fuel injected. So if I can get 3 of those to run on a tri-power Pontiac manifold, we can have a tri-power setup, but that's fuel injected. That would be cool. Again, since it's injected, we're injecting fuel in the same place that a carburetor does. I'm not expecting big power changes just from that, but we'll see. It'll be interesting to see about the fuel atomization. But the nice thing, obviously, always with fuel injection is that we can dial in the air fuel curve at every combination of load and RPM and stuff. So that's always beneficial. Plus, it looks like a tri-power, so it's like super cool. So I'm excited about that. So we have the potential to do that. I also can run one of those on the. I can either run one of those on the with an adapter on the Trophy 4-cylinder intake manifold, because they came with 1 barrels, 2 barrels, and 4 barrels. I don't have a factory 4-barrel manifold, unfortunately, for the Trophy 4-cylinder. So if anybody out there has one, please let me know. I'm interested in buying that. I'd like to have a factory 4-barrel manifold for it. That would be cool. But we can, like I said, we can run half of a V8 one, and hopefully that will work just as well. And then I was even thinking about taking one of the aftermarket aluminum ones and cutting it off, and just cutting the other sections off and just making it into a dedicated, 4-barrel kind of manifold. So we could do that. So I'm excited about the possibility of running both a tri-power with carburetors on the Pontiac stuff and a tri-power with EFI, if indeed we can make that work. That would be cool. The other thing that I saw and talked to the guys when I was at NPMC was I talked to the guys from FITECH. They've run lots of stuff over at Westech, and Eric and Ish have tuned a bunch of their stuff. They did have a tri-power setup on an LS manifold. Their tri-power setup was based on the 2-barrel Holley carburetors, though, so not the same as the 2G Rochester carburetors that they run for the Pontiac stuff. Ford ran some of those tri-powers. The Dodge guys did. They had a 346 pack. They had a 446 pack. They ran those carburetors, and you could run these in place of that. It was the EFI, so it's pretty cool. Because multiple carburetors, and then the substitution of multiple carburetor-looking EFI setups, also cool. So I'm talking to those guys about that. So that'll be interesting too, to see if we can run that on something. See how well it works on the. I would like to run a dual quad setup and a tri-power setup, just to see as a gee whiz kind of thing, maybe on an LS to see how much power it makes. I like those, and I'd like to employ that on something else. I think that tri-power setup that they do actually deserves a home on at the very least on a Gen 3 Hemi, but certainly on some other Dodge, a 440 or a 340 or something like that. So that also would be kind of cool. So I'd like to work with those guys on that. So it's like we're talking about, it's all about tri-power stuff. Because as we know, if 1 is good, then 2 is better, then 3 is even better than that. And then we just keep going on and on and on until we have all of these carburetors. And, there's more carburetors than we possibly need, but it still looks cool. And the nice thing about that, we could get very tricky, like with the tri-power stuff, and make it depending on how the manifold is set up, we could make it progressive so that we're running, the tip end is on the primary throttle or on the primary throttle blade, so the center carburetor normally. And I think that's the way that they do it. They're definitely, I think that the factory stuff is definitely progressive, so it has to be running off of the center carburetor. So that means they're all branched together. So we could do that same kind of thing and run it so as we're rolling in that the primary circuit is kind of operating and providing the fuel at low fuel and airflow needs, and then we bring the other 2 in at wide open throttle. So I'm excited about it. I haven't ever run I've run limited numbers of Pontiac motors anyway in total, but have not run a tri-power or even any kind of multi-carburetor Pontiac. So that would be cool. And for the Pontiac guys, even, a lot of people think that, hey, the tri-power GTO and that stuff, that's where it'll happen. But the reality is that Pontiac had multiple carburetor engines, like going way back. I mean, that 347 that I have from back in the 50s and 60s, they had multiple carburetors back then too. So that was pretty common for them to have multiple carburetors on their, hotter performance versions of the motors. So I'm excited about that. And I'm also excited that the tri-power intake manifolds are not, prohibitively expensive. They're a couple $100 or whatever, $200 or $300. So hopefully I can get one. And I don't need one that's in pristine. It's not a numbers matching kind of thing. I just need one that works and that will accept the carburetors that I have. I need to do more research. You guys can maybe let me know if I think that the Pontiacs had some of the different manifolds, the different year manifolds were set up to accept different versions of those carburetors, because we have I think there are 2 flow rates for the 2Gs. And so I think that they had a mix and match of the 2, just like what they did with the Holley versions on the other ones that had like 350 carburetors and then 500 carburetors. I think the 2G had a similar kind of thing. So they had bigs and littles, and I can't remember now. I have to figure out exactly what intake I would want, and then know that I have the right carburetor combinations of sizes and numbers of carburetors for the right sizes to fit that intake manifold. So all of that's cool. And everybody that I've talked to about doing this tri-power thing, they've all said the same thing. Oh, the linkages are terribly expensive. I'm like, you don't even understand. My linkage is going to be really inexpensive. It's either going to be a common rod, which is very easy to do, or it's going to be a piece of wire that opens all of them. So at any rate, I'm not worried about the linkage at all. Feeding all the lines, that's very easy on the dyno. All of that's just a series of AN fittings and T's and stuff. That's very, very easy. The only thing I'm worried about with the Holley 2G stuff is, can we activate all of them simultaneously off of one driver? Do we need multiple drivers? It's good. We're gonna have to have a little bit of a discussion there and find out. I don't know what ECU they're using, because all of the ones that they're selling are just singular setups. Otherwise, then we're gonna have to do it based on firing order or something. I'll have to get with Ish and Eric on that and figure out what we're doing, though. But I don't think it's insurmountable. I think it would be cool. And obviously, at the very least, we can always get the carbureted stuff to work on the factory tri-power manifold, because that's the way that it came on the V8. And then I think that it would work on the 4-cylinder as well. It'll just be more than more than we need, but it will certainly have enough. So I'm curious to see how the different kind of manifolds work. And we have single plane manifolds too, which unless we get, it's the way that it always is. You have to have we talked about this today about having enough motor for cylinder heads and things like we talked about the other day, that the cylinder head, you can have a cylinder head that flows a lot and will support a lot of power, but it's not going to make a lot of power unless you have the other things. And the carburetor and the intake manifold is kind of the same way. If we have 700, 800 or 1,000 CFM worth of airflow potential, if we only need 300 or 400, the rest of it is just kind of a waste. In fact, the rest of it could actually be, if we have that kind of situation where we have twice as much airflow as we need in terms of carburation, it could actually make the thing not as responsive and not work as well. Maybe we just have to cut it down to two of the working carburetors instead of 3, but we'll see how all that is. But I'm very excited about it. I'm very excited about tri-power stuff. So will the tri-power intake make more power than the single 4-barrel intake on a Pontiac? Let's put a mild Pontiac 350. So we'll see. We got a little bit specific there, but that's okay. That's always good for the polls here. Tri-power or dual quad modular power. I did a bunch of modular. I went down a modular hole today. It was good. I've recently heard that Dorman has changed their 462 valve intake manifold design. Supposedly the new version makes more power than the now discounted Ford performance manifold. So did Dorman make the intake for Ford Performance? The 2-valve one, the stock 2-valve one? Or did Ford Performance not offer a stock 2-valve one? So are you saying that the new version of the Dorman makes more power than the old version of the Dorman? So just let me know. Tri-power for looks, dual quads for power. Would variable lobe spread be useful cam option? I don't know what you mean by variable lobe spread. Tri-power on the Tropy 4-cylinder. That should work. I mean, for 2-barrel manifolds, that's also possible. 448 IDA Webers on a Cleveland. Yeah, downdrafts on a Cleveland are really cool. I mean, downdrafts on anything are cool. three AMR blowers. More carbs is more better. That's right. That's all. That's how it always is. Chevy had an extra big 2-barrel for the 400 motor. What size was the 2G on the 400? Variable lobe separation can be had with double overhead cam. Yeah, because if you can vary the intake and the exhaust cam independently, you can change lobe separation angle. I had a 63 Grand Prix with a 421 with a tri-power. That's cool. Coyote does variable LSA as a matter of course. It's basically the entire strength of the TI VCT system along with the total cam timing. Yeah, changing the lobe separation angle is not the only thing that variable cam is doing, though. What about triples? Is that like a double, but more of that? Great linkage perspective. That's right. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid to make my own linkage. Question for the whole group, LS guys. How much boost have you pushed at LS9 gaskets and what power levels? I'm expecting the gaskets on our current build to be our weak link. The LS9 gaskets, we went to 30 pounds and 1500. The gasket isn't going to be your problem. If you have a stock block, the block is going to be your problem before the head gasket is. Or a stock rod or a stock piston. The very first trophy 3x2 tri-power setup became available on the 50s. Oh, not trophy. The very first 3.2 tri-power 57 Oldsmobile was called the W code J2 option. Top off its powerful 371-inch rocket. I don't think that that's the very first factory tri-power option because Pontiac had them in 57 also, right? Did they? Maybe they didn't. Maybe they only had dual quads. Could be wrong about that. Yeah, they had dual 4 barrels. Yeah, they didn't go to tri-power until earlier than that. So that was the first one. Then what did you say that it was? A 57 Oldsmobile. That's cool. I don't know a lot about the Oldsmobile history. M90 adapter for what? What's the M90 adapter for? 65 and up, total 750. Honestly, double 2 barrels on a 4-cylinder is the way to go. What I would like to do is I have the factory. I think mine's a factory 1-barrel intake manifold on the Trophy 4-cylinder, and I think I did an adapter to put that 4412 2-barrel 500 CFM Holley on it. But what I'd like to do is I kind of wanted to do 3 1-barrels. That would have been cool. But 3 2-barrels on there, or 2 2-barrels even would be probably enough on that. That's right. Double the Richard, multiple carbs. What do we know about the new AFR LS3 enforcer heads? Are they the greatest thing since sliced bread for LS3s with the 231, 246? I don't know anything about an enforcer LS3 head. Is that something new? I'll have to talk to them. 65, 64, 65, and 66 tri-power intakes were different in how they mounted to the engine. What do you mean by that? I know in 65 they changed the intake manifold. 64 has a different water. They have different water passages. Thinking about how cool a 256 Merc flathead with EFI and a turbo would be. All right. I'm late. Did they make it for a big block Chevy? Did they make what, a tri-power setup for a big block Chevy? Tri-power, most likely not. Old boss said, get a six-pack intake if you hate yourself and enjoy misery. I think that's what they said about the Rochester fuel injection, too, for the small block Chevy guys. Ben Alameda says you think dyno equals faster and you over carb. I don't know. I don't know what your statement means. I know Ben Alameda, but what is it you're trying to ask there? Did they make the 3.2 intake for a big block Chevy? Oh, I don't think that. Maybe there's a big block Chevy tri-power. I haven't seen it. I didn't look on the FITECH website to see if they had a tri-power for a big block Chevy. I only saw it for. I mean, it'd be easy to do, but I only saw it for the LS. So Dorman updated the intake design, and supposedly that new Dorman makes more than the factory PI and the old Dorman. Oh, okay. I wonder what they did. I think the problem with the tri-power is too much airflow and not enough adaptability. Like Rochester have an acceleration pump for initial acceleration, and the secondary have vacuum and metering rods. I heard they're updating the Trailblazer SS design to be better. That would be cool if they're doing that. I love my 63 tri-power 421 Catalina. Oh, Catalina, that's pretty cool. 390, 3-speed column shift. 1420s at 100. That's good. Catalina's pretty hefty too. Only thing stock is the block. Everything else is overkill. Contemplating filling the block. Haven't quite decided. Looking to get to 2,000 horsepower. I think most guys doing 2,000 horsepower are not using a stock block. I think that they're using something else. If they're using a stock block, I think that it's like a limited number of times. Isn't there an intake with 4 or 6 Strombergs? Yeah, I've seen those. Those are for sale too. I once replaced 2-barrel carbs on my Chevette. Nice. Chad tried to do that on the Chevette that he bought, and it didn't work very well. I mean, the motor was kind of toast. $69. Oh, that's right. I forgot the 427. I had one of those too. I had a 69 Corvette that was a tri-power car. The heads are different. If you want to run tri-power on a later block, you need a 66 intake. I had a 56 Cadillac with 2 4s on it. That's cool. Dual quads are good. I like dual quads. J2 Ols 57. I'm going to ask every day for the 4.3 intake build. Oh, to make a 4.3 V6 intake manifold, is that what you're talking about? I haven't been down to West Tech. It's not going to happen until I go down there. I want to see the new Dorman against the factory PI. Oddly enough, I'm scrolling through Craigslist and found a 389 with a tri-power for sale. It's probably not cheap, I would imagine. I'd like to know what the stock block record is. Does anyone know if a Terminator X Max will control a 5R55S transmission? I also add a 2 4-barrel 409. 409s are cool. Okay. I don't know what your deal is, but you're obviously not here to help at all. So and just like that. Oh, Taylor, she's okay. Yeah, we don't need knuckleheads. You have another LM7. There you go. Happy to help, Nathan. Holley does not support the 5R55. I don't know if anyone does. I first clicked on the wrong thing. I needed to do the end all thing. Yeah, I mean, there's no reason for, like I said, there's no reason for knuckleheads. We want you to come here and you want you to help and you know, bring something to the table, man. You know, make the world a better place. Make the chat a better place. How's our poll doing? How's our will the tri-power intake make more power than a single 4-barrel intake on a mild Pontiac 350? 54% saying yes, so a little bit more. I kind of thought everyone was going to say no. The factory intake, the factory 4-barrel intake manifold for a Pontiac is no joke. It's a really good one. So I think the tri-power is going to be hard pressed to beat that. The 2GC was very commonly the only legal option in many lower circle track classes. Yeah. 389 with a tri-power rebuilt for 6,500. That seems cheap. I mean, it seems reasonable, I guess, for 389. If I get long tube headers installed in my Silverado OI6, do I need to get it tuned? I would think you would. The headers make enough of a difference, but honestly, I've never tried that on a vehicle and just ran it on the dyno to see what happens, both in terms of air, fuel, and power to see if it's good. Turns out 12V Cummins and 440 motor mounts are very close to identical, which is awesome. That's good. For a Winnebago, a Cummins turbo diesel is pretty good. I have seen some of the Coyote stuff. Guys are making big power with those. 460 in a van or a Coyote. I think for a big heavy van, a 460 is the way to go. Richard, didn't you do tests on water meth injection and it end up not being evenly distributed? Yeah, it doesn't. On a long runner like LS manifold, we tested it on I think it was a Dorman, but I think it was like an LS6 style manifold. And on a long runner manifold like that, it doesn't make it to all the cylinders evenly. Need to O-ring your block and put billet caps on it. It should be okay without a tune, but probably won't get much gain without the tune. You know, I say that, but when we run, we just have to add fuel to it when we do a header test versus stock exhaust manifolds. You would have to add a little bit of fuel, but if it's a mass air car, it might already do that. You know, it might see more flow. I honestly don't know in the vehicle. Sleeve block with fire rings is not stock. I thought that the Mahovitz was telling me that the Coyote blocks would not do what the earlier mod motor blocks would do. That's why that they had to make a billet block for those. Factory vacuum progressive tri-power linkage work like a Q-jet and could be better than mechanical linkage. Cool. Math tuning is easy. Yeah, I you know, we did get spoiled back when I was doing the Mustang stuff because my 88 was the first year of the mass air car for California only. And it sure made life a lot easier to put things in it, especially camshafts and stuff. Uh, 3D racing. Are you talking about the Corvair motors? I'm gonna have to look up the factory progressive linkage and see. Taylor, I've never done any tuning on stock stuff. James, I've never run a Predator carburetor. We've talked about that many times. I've never even seen one that I can remember all the time that I've been at Westech. Richard, thanks. We're glad you're here. Michigan Sound update. All 3800 Series 2 and 3 crankshafts are the same. NA or SC are the same. I tore my engine down. I'm replacing all of the rod bearings. My crankshaft still looks okay. I'm sending it. Okay. It would be interesting to see if you grabbed a couple of those and spun them to see if the balance is the same. I do like the 3800s though. I should be going up to pick up a Metro here before too long, which would be good. I'm excited. I have my fingers crossed every time you go get a car, especially after the conversations that I'm curious how it's going to be. Richard, you ever do a meet and greet? I never have, but I would be open to that. That's one of the great things about going to like that NPMC conference or even SEMA and PRI when I went there is being able to talk to people in person that I talk to a lot on the phone and through social media. We talked about that when Dan and I talked about getting together and doing something. Anybody that wants to buy me a drink is welcome to do that. Sign your carb. It'd be worth less if I do that. Or an M90. I'm gonna try. I gotta remind myself here. You don't need to remind me. Flag blower. I gotta order a flag dip. Yeah, Michigan. That's what I'm wondering. I don't know if the cranks start out the same. If they all start out the same, or if they team them with specific rods. Because aren't the blower rods different on the supercharged ones? Like the an L32 rod is different than a L67 rod, right? I'm Midwest. You're in the Midwest and you'd come all the way out here for that? Seems like a long trip. You guys just need to meet me when I go down to Florida. I'm looking for snakes. I have plenty of time to talk to people while I'm walking around in the middle of the night out in the middle of the swamp. In Pennsylvania, I got to take a trip back to Ohio, and I also have to take a trip back to see back to Kentucky too, to see Brian and the guys. We're at 53% saying no. There we've changed a little bit on our tri-power stuff. They're thinking, that factory 4-barrel is pretty good. L67, L32 rods are powdered and longer, I believe, with the lower compression. Really, they changed that. It seems odd that they would change the rod length for the same deck height and stuff. Okay, now I got to look that up. Let's see this. This is ZCP stock engine power limit recommendations. L67, L30 through L will support 500 plus wheel horsepower, proper mods, octane, a good tune. Pistons are the weak point. L26 is good to 400 wheel horsepower. Rods are the weak point. L26, L36 are 9.4. L32, L67, 8.5. Blocks and cranks are all interchangeable. NA and SC cars have different wrist pins, so the rods and pistons do not interchange. The only difference in the heads. Yeah, we talked about that. Interesting. They didn't show anything about the length though. L32 has powder metal rods. I always am suspect when I read stuff on. Yeah, some of this stuff is not what I would call scientific. I mean, Greene County used to live in Lenore City when I was young. What's the trading range of Bitcoin? I have no idea. I don't even know what a Bitcoin is, so I'm not that guy. Running long 2-bit engine 7/8, full length 3-inch with X pipe on L96 without a tune for longer than I wanted. Runs fine, but I know it'll run better with a tune. And you don't know until you test it. That's always the problem. Richard, have you done any EFI testing on an old Chevy Straight 6? I haven't run EFI. I only have a 292 for the Chevy, and I haven't run EFI on it. We ran it carbureted. I recently put the North Star throttle body on my 03 Bonneville SSEI. I'm going to use the Vortex 350 mass air sensor, and it's running good. I think I need more fuel pressure. That would scare me changing mass air meters, because you don't know how they're scaled. Thought you were still doing day trading on the computer. Not having anything to do with Bitcoin though. Everyone knows back pressure makes torque. Yeah. So somebody made a comment that on one of the things today that anybody that's watching Richard Holdner's stuff is more interested in peak power. I'm like, that's not like at high RPM power. I'm like, that's exactly the opposite of what reality is. And the person also said that that the torque just determines where the motor makes power, and that bore size is the thing that determines, how much power you make. I'm like, and the guy sounded pretty sharp, like he was very insightful, but unfortunately incorrect. We're all about gap and boost. I said, you haven't seen obviously the number of junkyard motors that are involved in this that have nothing to do with 10,000 RPM, race motors. One 1.3.2, 1.3.3, 5.638, 5.642, 5.7, and an L36. An L36. So an L36 is the NA one. Bench racing on YouTube. Exactly. And there are a lot of smart sounding people still saying that back pressure is good. We got into that. Somebody was not just certain of that, but adamant and bordering on abusive about that particular subject, and started telling me how he was having a discussion or an argument or whatever of somebody else that was supposed to be really sharp or whatever. I said, well, that's obviously not me. But how he, spun him around and made him sound silly, and because this guy knows everything and knows what back pressure does. I'm like, look, that's not the case. What spark plug gap do you like for Autolite copper core and 12 pounds of boost, pump 93? We run 19 or 20 thousandths plug gap for boosted stuff. Just got the core support ripped out. I think I'm done messing with the truck. Wrap it up. Uh-oh. That's not good. As long as everybody's okay, that's the important thing. Get rid of that. There is a popular Mustang guy that is very brash on anyone suggesting that long tube headers make more torque down low than shorty or stock. Yeah, he's not too knowledgeable or hasn't seen any actual testing. How many episodes of Engine Masters have talked about that on headers? I know I have 3 or 4. Well, I have lots of videos up. Every time we run headers versus stock exhaust manifolds, we make a lot more power everywhere. You have a 65 Corvair that has 4 carburetors on it. Yeah, it has. Doesn't it have 4 1-barrels on it? What it really needs is a turbo. Yeah, back pressure not beneficial. I do want to see if I remember somebody talking to me about different kinds of mufflers for turbos, and I always thought it was a restriction thing, because we know if we put a restrictive exhaust on the exit side of a turbo, it's going to hurt everything. It hurts power, hurts response, it hurts all that stuff. So, but they were saying that there was something going on with a particular style of turbo, and I don't know if they were just parroting turbo muffler, nonsense from way back. But I'm always open to testing it and seeing if something does something. It's kind of cool. I like stuff like that. Like, I was really excited when when Uncle Tony had me on his thing and he was talking to me about this piston flip thing, I was excited about it. I wanted it to be something. I wanted to actually be like an old school trick that actually showed something. So when I was doing that, I told him, I said, that's really cool. I want it to be something. I want it to work. So I'm definitely going to test it. And told him that on the live deal that when he did the interview. Because I want stuff like that to work. I want magnets in your gas tank to work. I want tornadoes to work. I want all that stuff to work. But it usually ends up that it doesn't work. A turbo is a good muffler. That's true. It does quiet stuff down. For years in the Harley world, guys believed pipes made less power. They would even wear a washer in the pipe at an angle, a weld. I'm sure that's supposed to be welded to induce back pressure. Sometimes it would help. Sometimes it would hurt. Yeah, I don't. The thing that tells you whether something works or not is to test it. It's pretty easy to test. Where should I start with building a turbo setup? The first thing you should do is decide on how much power you make, and then pick a turbo according to how much power you want to make. No back pressure burns exhaust valves. Yeah, you see all of the top fuel cars with their zoomies burning exhaust valves, right? When was the last time you were surprised by a result? It wasn't that long ago. I've had stuff surprise me quite often, actually. Top fuel directors don't have any kind of back pressure. No, they have down pressure, right? What was the fuel vapor carb thing? I think that would be a good idea too. I mean, obviously you're trying to get if you read scientific research, droplet size is a critical thing when you're trying to vaporize the fuel and you're trying to extract all the energy out of the oxygen molecules. And burn it all, because the more surface area you have, there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. And if you could make it into a vapor, maybe that would be better. But I don't know. I've never run zoomies on anything. Somebody's asking about testing that. I've never run that. Tri-power on my 66 looks good, so I installed on my 67. That's good. Richard, lots of stuff made by so-called top shelf engineers do not work. You cured all the questions I had about facing spark plugs. Oh, indexing them. Yeah, again, that's another thing. I was disappointed. I wanted indexing I wanted it to show something. I wanted to reveal the power information that all of these people over the years had tried, and obviously it had worked. I think a lot of these things, like when I used to change the oil in my Camaro to Arco Graphite, which is just awful for just terrible oil. But you were doing something to your car, you were modifying it, you're making it better, and it always felt like it was faster. I think there's a lot of that goes along with these things. Like when guys put tornadoes or put the throttle body spacers or things like that in their vehicles, and they've modified it, and that definitely feels better. we certainly want it to, but whether or not, Richard, I just saw your email. I think those 8 400 headers must have been a comparison dyno against the factory manifolds with cats and some generous dyno conditions. Yeah, I don't know. I would always like to be there for the testing, just in case I had questions or concerns or whatever. Back pressure would depend on application. Something boosted needs less. NA can deal with more. I picked up a couple of tenths with more back pressure. So you're saying that you have put a more restrictive exhaust on your car and it makes more power? That doesn't sound right. Richard, I'm working on a chop channeled stretch with a roll cage 33 Ford. Be running an LT1 8-speed with BTR 225 power package. Oh, that's cool. I just bought 3 M90 superchargers. That's good. Welcome. 2 Gen 3s, 1 Gen 5. What factory injectors are better than L67 injectors, or do I need to change them? I don't remember. I'd have to look up to see. I don't know off the top of my head what size those are. We just put 80s in it. I like the 80-to-1 headers. I plan on testing 80-to-1 headers. Supercharger oil, yeah, that's like rear end fluid. That's not good. E3 plugs, yep, I tried that. Saw a video of a guy who ran zoomies in the dyno. It looked like a tornado went through. Yeah, it isn't. It's not going to be pleasant. I think ours will come out and not go straight up. They'll be sliced and aimed back a little bit. It's like, how do you get the OM to get tolerances too tight on a rod bearing? Seems like it's on purpose. I don't think the engineers would do that. So I don't know the whole story about what's going on there. Zoomies versus long tubes would be interesting. I think that that's going to be in favor of a long tube. I thought about a few things. A highly pressurized gas line could be heated above boiling point and be pressurized to compensate the gaseous state. And when it's injected, it turns into a vapor. Yeah, I don't like the idea of heating up gasoline, but seems strange to think I've been watching these lives for a couple of years now. I've only been doing them for a couple of years. I mean, I haven't been on YouTube that long. Todd, what's going on? Some people think a twin 2.5 or smaller exhaust or a similar exhaust is smaller than 3 inch, so maybe that's it. Yeah, they need to calculate some area there, but just got here. What was that about Pontiac manifolds versus headers? No, we were talking about tri-power Pontiac stuff. I got a whole bunch of tri-power stuff I have coming up to test. Got some fun ideas for porting one of the Gen 3 M90s. Looking to the Gen 5 and back to the Gen 3, it's very clear why the Gen 5 is better and what I should do. Yeah, you can see there's a dramatic difference between those two. There's a difference in the inlet, there's a difference in the discharge. And then just for fun, now go look at the Roush version of that they use in those on the V8 blower kits, the Roush M90, and go look at that one and look at the discharge in the inlet side of that. You can't, I don't know, I didn't remember seeing a shot that was directly on the entry going into the rotors. But if you look at that blower, you'll go, oh yeah, that's that's why that one makes a lot more power. Richard, I saw Subaru made less power. I seen it on a dyno when they put a free flowing exhaust on it, but they tuned it, it made more power. Oh, okay, Katie. If you've seen it, if you've seen a direct back-to-back test where they ran it one way and then while they were at the track, they dropped the exhaust off and put on a more restrictive exhaust and ran it again, with no time delay and no other changes and no variables where that actually happened, I would like to see that test. I just have never seen that. Doing a tri-power for my 455 and my 65 GTO. Not original carbs. Going to convert them to ethanol. Very cool. What year cylinder heads are on that? Are they the later ones? Are they above? So you have a later than 65 intake manifold on there. Picked up 800 babies. Nice. Ice cream cake. Yes, I do like ice cream cake. I'm in the shop pretty much the entire time I'm awake, so it's hard to always tune in. No, I get that. It's all a big time suck. You don't do real world testing. Many things vary in the vehicles themselves. Yes, we did back-to-back testing. Okay. I don't do real world testing. That's great. So the Roush M90 has the entire outlet side of the rotors exposed. So there's no reason I couldn't hog out the whole outlet side instead of making it a triangle. Yeah, look and see what they did. I mean, and the inlet is bigger too. The whole opening is bigger, I think. '67 428 heads, 65 manifold, small center carb, 11.5 to 1 daily driver. What size is the center carb on that? On the tri-power? All your testing isn't real, it's AI. I know. And you'd be surprised how many times I get that comment. Not the real world thing, which is interesting, but the fact that I don't do any of the work. That I'm just a YouTube guy. Hey, I saw this test on some magazine or somebody else's site or whatever, and they're like, "You're just a guy that's putting this stuff together." I'm like, look at the magazine that you're talking about, and then look at the name where it says by author. Look at the guy who did the testing. That's me. I'm the guy. So a tri-power doesn't open up the 3 carbs simultaneously? No, not always. On your video of cast manifolds or tube headers to feed a turbo, there was no mention of log style. Do I assume your assessment is the same? Just get the exhaust. Just get the exhaust to the turbo. That's the main thing. Then the other things are nitpicking. Sometimes you have to run a log style, like we've run the log style stuff with the Dodge Ram. Those manifolds, by the way, are terrible. They're terrible for power NA, and worse for a turbo thing. But they still work. I mean, they'll still provide all of the air to all the hot exhaust to the turbo, and the turbo will still do happy things and make boost and make more power. There are better ways to do that with some restrictive manifolds, but a log and a factory manifold and a header, there's wild varieties of each one of those. So they're not, those three things are not universal any more than a long runner and a short runner or whatever, or no runner. I guess you could put that in there, any more than those are some kind of universal description. So go ahead and get rid of our pull. 51%, 51.49, pretty close split though. Just gonna get one more modular power in. Okay. I don't know CFM, but it's a small bolt pattern on that tri-power other than 66. It had the carb base as the same size as the later 2Gs. Okay. Did some of the manifolds have all of the 3 the same, and then some of them had one smaller center carb? Funny how people claim to know what you do off screen. I know. I try not to ever do that. Real world is on the streets. The engine dyno test can't show you some things that come into play. We don't have much information on your vehicles, just engines. The testing that's done on engines translates directly to what can happen at the track. So if you have a change of 100 horsepower on the dyno, that will translate directly into a change at the track. You have to have the other things right, and we've talked about that many times. But if you run long tube headers and they make more power than stock exhaust manifolds, that will translate into something at the track. So I don't understand why there's not the correlation there. But, you know, I think I understand it. Let's see here. Tri-Power makes more power than the 66 and early Carter carb intakes, but less than the same as a Q-Jet. The one that I tested was the Q-Jet one. I think that that's the good one. How many wet fogger kits can an engine take? I don't know. I mean, I think we've gone to the limit of one of those, like a 300 shot. 66 had all the same size. 62 to 65 had a smaller center. I think I know the 64, 65 had a smaller center, big outers. I had an Edelbrock Tri-Power on my Vega. That's cool. 64 and early had a different flange angle than the 65 and up heads, yeah. And then different water passage too, right? They won't line up. And then they changed the valve angle too later on. When did they do that? In like 67 or something? The outlet side of the M90 doesn't make any seal at the triangle part. Chopping it off shouldn't affect that, I think. Port timing is an important thing. You can't just have the whole bottom side open. That is a real thing. But if you look at what they did on that Roush one, the triangle is much bigger and goes almost the length of the whole rotor pack. So that's got to flow a lot better. 67 is the 14-degree angle. Okay. Oh, dude, I haven't taken one apart. I'm just saying they all have leakage on them, and you can't just open it up like crazy. We were worried about that when I put the carburetor on the top on the inlet side of that, and it still worked. The MPX M90 case is better than the OEM one too. I may have seen a different image. What can happen? What I'm saying, things vary in real world conditions such as back pressure. I never mention anything because I think it's going to happen. I tell you guys what actually happens. That sounds like a dyno guy. Okay, if you think back pressure is a good thing and you're one of the back pressure people, that's fine. I don't know how back pressure would only change real world if it showed a change in power. The only way that you can run more mile an hour or run a quicker acceleration is to have more average power production. We would see that on the dyno. If we run an exhaust that is more restrictive, I've never seen that make more power. And if it's more restrictive and it makes less power, I don't know how, even in the real world, it could ever run a quicker ET or more mile an hour in the quarter. I don't know how it would perform better. I don't know how that's going to happen. So if somebody could explain that to me, that would be great. Yeah, I got the polyquad thing. I have lots of builds you talk about on the streets. I could care less about really what. See, now you're just going. Now you're just going down a different path here. It's a tailwind or headwind or temperature or traction, tire pressure. Which 16 heads? There are 3 different versions: a round port, super rare, big valve, screw-in studs, and very small press-in studs. Richard, did I ever send you a link on extreme water injection testing? They tested 4 times the fuel flow as water injection, turned 60 octane into 90 plus. So they added a whole bunch of water to change the detonation threshold? Is that what you're talking about? I saw we were testing on some other channel. The hammer exhaust to simulate was done to clear a steering shaft. They hammered a lot and there was no difference. That's Engine Masters. They hammered the headers almost closed and it didn't change the power very much or at all until they really hammered it. $66 and up later, I believe, is 17 degrees. Yeah, Todd, let me know what's going on with your motor. And on that note, it is time to go. Thank you guys all for showing up, and I'll see you all tomorrow.